Welcome to Takla Talks Law School Edition. Today I've got one of my employees, Zaina. How you doing? She's off screen.
Good. How are you?
So she's actually in the middle of trying to apply to law school, and she bothers me with advice at all times of the day. So I
Yes, I
figured, why
do.
don't I just give this to everybody so I don't have to repeat it to her? Is that fair? Is that
Yeah,
fine?
that's fine.
Okay. So my name is Michael Takla. I'm a personal injury attorney here in Houston, Texas. I have worked at some of the most prestigious personal injury law firms in Houston, worked on some of the biggest cases. Some of the cases, some of the audience have heard of, I've been a part of that team. And, my law school experience was not the normal law school experience in terms of how to get there. A lot of it was, but a lot of, like anyone else, there are personal issues, that you've got family issues, you've got financial issues. All of these things culminated in me choosing, one, University of Houston for law school, and two, going out on my own about 7 years at my own law firm. So, on the way, I've made some mistakes. On the way, I've learned a lot. And along the way, I've also made sure to make the right choices at the right times. And that's what I want to give people who are listening to this. So, what questions you got?
Okay, so firstly, what inspired you to become a lawyer?
So, actually, two things. One, money, right? That's what everybody says. Two, my junior year of high school, my dad had a severe heart attack and he needed a triple bypass immediately. And so what ended up happening, so I'm Egyptian American. We don't know the American health system like everyone else. Actually, no one does. But he had triple bypass and he told me to come downstairs. I looked at him and I was like, oh, he's having a heart attack. So I called his PCP. His PCP said, come to this hospital. It was about 25 minutes away. And I wanted to call an ambulance. He said, don't call an ambulance, just take me there. No problem. We took him there and everything worked out. He got the surgery. He was fine. But within the week, I got a little letter from the health insurance company that said, you owe over $1 million for this surgery. And my dad had health insurance at the time. And I called the health insurance. The health insurance said, well, because your dad was not taken by ambulance, we didn't consider this catastrophic. And as a result, you owe it. So it was a few months of trying to fight that. And everything worked out in the end. But it was stressful. As a junior in high school, it was extremely stressful. And at that point, I was like looking up attorneys. And I found out attorneys fight these type of things. I was like, yeah, I want to do that. Like, this is unacceptable. And what happens if I was less, like I just didn't do enough or didn't understand enough, and they did take advantage of me and I got stuck with this type of bill, or just something like this happens. And so I realized that a lot of times, we always want to do the right thing, but a lot of times companies are not thinking that way. They're thinking, what is the best benefit of the company? And it's a lot easier for me to represent people who want to do the right thing. So I decided to do that.
What an amazing story.
Yeah.
So what should someone consider before deciding to go to law school?
Oh, there's so many. Where you are in life, why. I tell people their why. So when I went to law school, there were a lot of people there that are not practicing anymore. And the reason is because they were like, I just want a big law job, because they heard the sticker price, which coming out of law school when I was going there was like 160 or 180, something like that. And that sticker price and something like that is great. But you'll end up with burnout. So you've got to figure out your number one thing is your why. What do you want to do? Like, what do you genuinely want your everyday to be? Because being a lawyer is not a 8-to-5 job. If you want to do it well, it's not an 8-to-5 job. It is a kind of round the clock. Now you can create an 8-to-5 lawyer job. And if that's what you want to do, gear what you want to do that. The why is super important. The second is you've got to start early. And like, these are common things and you probably heard them thousands of times. Like, you got to start early. You got to have a good GPA. You got to have a good LSAT, right? But you've got to set yourself up with the most success, and you've got to think about where you want to end up, right? So I was not interested in ending up in like a top 10 law school. I just wasn't, right? I I had some family stuff. I knew that I was probably going to stay local in Houston. So that's what I focused on. So like sophomore year of college, I looked at the requirements to get into, like U of H, Baylor, UT, and just made sure that I stuck within those requirements and focused on what they need. But if you're like, look, I just want to go to the most elite law school possible. Yeah, you've got to hustle from day one, right?
So, how did you know that, you wanted to go to law school and the law school you chose was the right school for you?
Honestly, till to this day, I don't know if that law school was like the most right school for me. You'll never actually know, right? But you make a decision based on a few things. So, one, when you are choosing to go to law school, it is a financial choice. You've got to accept that. Me and my friends make jokes that we will be paying off our student loans till after we die, but it's okay, right? Because you will make more money, you will do these things, and you will have a really rewarding career. What matters is for what law school you want to go to is what do you want to do? So if you want to go into like big law, then going to a lower ranked law school is not going to get you there, right? But if you want to be a district attorney, go into opening a criminal defense practice. I'm not saying a lower school will get you there, but you can take a little bit off the rankings. You don't have to go to a top 15 school. You don't have to go to a top 50 school. You can go off the rankings. And if you want to open up your own law firm, if you're like, I just want to graduate so I can just go do my own thing, you don't need to put that stress on yourself. Like, I have to get the top school. I have to do this. I have to do these things. Like, it's life. All of this is stuff that you want to do, but most of my friends did not do these things, and they are extremely successful.
So let's talk undergrad
Okay.
now. So what did you major in, and what do you recommend future law students to major in?
So the most common thing, and coming from an Egyptian household, my parents were like, you want to go to law school, you got to go poli-sci. That's the normal thing, right? You don't have to do that. So look, if you want to do patent law, then yeah, you have to have some sort of engineering background, right? Besides that, pick what you like. Pick what you like. Pick what you want to learn. Do well in it because your GPA is important to get to law school, and just do that. I tell people that if I could go back, because I like being a trial lawyer, if I could go back, I'd probably do like psychology. Most of the experts that I use for picking a jury, understanding a jury, are people who had psych degrees, theater arts degrees, and you wouldn't expect that, but they've done extremely well, right? So you want to do something that kind of tailors to that. But at the end of the day, just do something you like, because you're going to spend your time doing it and getting a high GPA in it.
Okay, so what you're saying is in undergrad, you should focus on your GPA and find something that you like to do so you can
Yeah.
do well in it for the future.
Absolutely. And something you want to maybe transition. Like if you want to own your own law firm, law school is going to relatively teach you how to be a lawyer. It is not going to teach you business. So business degree, why not? Right? And that's a good fallback too, because if for any reason you go to law school and you're like, I didn't like this, a JD with a business degree undergrad can get you a ticket anywhere. So it's not a bad look.
Right. Now regarding the LSAT, I feel like everyone's on their own journey. Even I'm still on my own journey.
Sure.
But when do you recommend starting to study for it? Like I said, some people take a year off to study and work. Some people do it during undergrad. Some people wait years. So when do you recommend, as an undergraduate student, when do you recommend to take it?
When do you start learning how to read? That's when you should start. No, look, it depends. So if you are trying to score the absolute highest, and you're like, I need to score between a 170 and a 180, and that's what I need to do, my life depends on it, then you need to start early, and you need to do it often, and you need to practice it. But it is the amount of hours put in. Those amount of hours could be put in over a significant amount of time or a short amount of time. It's just how much pain do you want to put yourself into to do that, to get to a score, right? And again, look at the school you actually want to go to. Be real with yourself about your situation financially. Be real with yourself about your situation personally, and be real with about your situation of what you want to do coming out of law school. Pick that school, look at that LSAT, and then see where you're scoring. If you're scoring a 145 and you need a 160 to get into the school then you need to spend months to get there, and you've got to make it a second job. And if you have a second job, make it a third job. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, right? It's not, there's no like perfect formula. Start early and just try to get done. But look, if your school needs a 155 and you're scoring 157, I don't know what you're doing. Just spend the time enjoying your life because law school's coming. It just depends.
So give a recommendation to a junior in undergrad.
Okay.
What would you recommend to them regarding the LSAT? A full-time student.
Full-time student?
Yeah.
And is this person working?
This person is, let's say, not working.
Okay. So junior in college, not working, is like, I want to go to law school. So first thing I'll do is take an LSAT. Okay. Don't be shy. I know it's not a fun experience, but the bar is not going to be a fun experience either. So take an LSAT, find out your score, and say, what do I need to get into the school I need to get to? So let's just say your score that you need is, say you score 145 and the score you need is 160. Then I would say, all right, I need to make a 6-month program to get to 160, because 160 is hard, right? From that score. I would spend a few hours a week. And the number one thing I tell people, and I didn't learn this for the LSAT, I learned this for the bar. The test takers can only ask you so many different types of questions. So if you've done these questions over and over and over again, by the time you get to the LSAT, you're not going to be reading the question to read the question. You can be reading the question and say, oh, what are they testing me on here? Okay, this is the answer. You're going to move on. And once I realized that, and that's like for every standardized test. Once I realized that, my scores for the bar exam were getting a lot higher. And my score for LSAT was getting pretty high too, but I did not implement it as well until I went and got the bar. So that's what I would probably do: a 6-month situation, a few hours, and consistently test yourself. Like if I could test myself if I go back and test myself every week or 2 weeks, I would do that.
So you recommend for a junior in undergrad to take a practice test basically once every week and dedicate how many hours a day do you recommend?
Man, it depends. A few hours. I mean, I'd probably do a couple hours a night.
So like 3 to 4? Or would you say maybe 2 and keep it light?
Like 2 hours every night. Or if you're going to space it out, like, oh, I'm going to do a few hours like 3 times a week, then I'd probably do like 3 or 4, something like that. Because you got to live your life too.
Right. So let's say the student is studying, doing all of the things that they need to. They finish taking the LSAT, they get the score they want. What is next? What do you recommend starting on?
Personal statements and then applications, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your personal statement, a lot of people are like, no one reads that. They do. They actually really read it. So my personal statement, I got a couple things. I got a few scholarships based on my personal statement. And then I also got handwritten responses to my personal statement with my acceptance. I like your personal statement. You've done this, you've seen this. I appreciate that. We need people like you here, type of situation. So they do read it. And it needs to come from a lot of people want to write something, quote unquote, like sappy, because that's what sells. But it needs to come from a genuine place. Whatever it is, just come from a genuine place. And generally speaking, if you come from a genuine place in your writing, it will be better.
So what did you write about in your personal statement?
Oh man, I ain't gonna get into that. So at the time, I think it was like a day before my LSAT, I found out my mom had cancer.
Oh no.
Yeah. And it was legitimately a day. It was kind of crazy. Like a day before that. And then like, I think a week before that, like my ex-girlfriend broke up with me. So it was a rough week.
Yeah.
But I wrote about the American health system. I think something like that. It was like the American health system and how it's failing people who have cancer and failing people who have issues, and how it's affected me personally and how I want to change that. And so I think it worked out.
I think it did too.
Yeah.
So as an undergraduate student, what do you recommend for students to do to add to their resume? Like, what jobs could they take? Are there
Yeah.
organizations they can join? What did you do?
So I think the most common thing that people do is they try to say, well, I'm just going to work at a law firm. That looks great. And some of them do, I guess. But, I give the example, like a few of my friends were like athletes, like student athletes. They did really well. And they went to law school and they got kind of their pick of the law school of what they want to do. Not everyone's an athlete. So you've got to find something and get really involved in it. So the more involved you get, the better. I don't say like get involved in your local student association and then that. I'm talking about things that actually help people, especially anything like a charity organization or something like that, that you are adding real value to people. Law schools eat that up. They love it, right? And it makes sense because as a lawyer, one of the things I do is I work with charity organizations, right? I try to give back as much as I can, and they want people like that. And they want people like that because they also know those same people, when they go and graduate from the law school, they're going to give back to the law school, and they love donors. So they look at that early on.
Regarding the application process, how many law schools do you recommend a student apply to?
Oh man, that's so personal. If you are undecided of where you want to go and you just want to go to the best law school, as many applications as you can get out. If you know what law schools you want to go to, do that law school, pick a couple of backup law schools and be done. If it's someone like, for example, at U of H, who's applying in the U of H area, and you're just not going to go somewhere else, I would still apply to I apply to Baylor, I apply to U of H, I apply to South Texas, I apply to TMSL, and then I don't know, depending on your financial situation, maybe SMU and then if you're doing well, I still apply to UT anyway. And I would have those kind of situation. And if you can get into UT, you have the financial discussion if you can do that because it could help you later on as a lawyer. I say that as an Aggie, right? So I mean it.
Horns down.
Yeah, that's right. So that's how I would do it. If you are like, look, it's out of the school or not, pick a backup school just in case. You never know. You may just say, you know what, forget it, I'll do it. And you can always transfer. I had a few friends of mine who went to U of H. One transferred to UT Law, and one transferred to Georgetown. Very good school. And she was super bright. Still is super bright. And you can always transfer. So if you are like, if I don't get into school, it's make or break, don't do that.
So I think a big problem that a lot of, especially first generation students, kind of deal with is connections. A lot
Sure.
of people naturally have many connections when it comes to the law field because
Sure.
it gets you places.
It does.
But there are many, Arab Americans, for example, that don't have that connection. So what do you recommend to them to do to make those connections?
So let me tell you something. I know that feeling very, very well. When I went to law school, I had my Scion TC that I bought in high school with my own money because I used to walk to my job until I could afford a car. And fast forward, 5 years later, I'm in law school. And a lot of law school students had pretty nice cars. And a lot of them were parents or lawyers. Their uncle's a lawyer, and they're kind of just going down the track. They already know what law firm they're going to work at because it's their dad's law firm. That happens a lot. And it is, in a real sense, kind of defeating, right? You first go in there, you're like, how am I going to compete with these people? But two things. Be genuine as a person you are, like genuine. Two, don't be afraid to network. There's still people at the end of the day, and people want to work with other people. And so you're going to have to spend more time networking. You're just going to have to do it. And it's going to add. And you know what? You're going to find a lot of people who are the same boat as you, and they're going to be in the same boat as you trying to network with other people, and they're going to help you and you're going to help them. There are quite a few of my law school class that I stay in contact with, right? And if I have an issue that's outside of my practice, I call them. If they have an issue outside of their practice, they call me. Vice versa. I've repped some of them in lawsuits. I have helped them with their cases, and it has